So this week I thought we could carry on, if you fancy this, carry on the short project. So the idea was to produce something within a session. So we started off last week when I asked you to bring in an interesting item. And last week's project was really to do some quick drawings. So that was the idea of last week. This week I thought we'd take that a stage further and do some tonal drawing. So it can be tonal drawing or tonal painting. So I made a start on this little demo this morning, so I thought I'd use this as a demo piece. So this is I'm just using acrylics. Obviously we've got a few objects here if anybody wants to borrow any objects. Chris wants to have a go at the telly in a minute. So you could, I also brought a few examples in. So this book is all sort of like daily painting. So this was sort of part of the inspiration for the idea of doing something within a session each week. I'm actually trying to do some work from observation every day this month and basically posting what I do online each day. So these were my yesterday's little pictures down the seafront. That's another thing is, like, if you work small, it helps to get quick, work quickly. So I started that one. They weren't brilliant. I forgot to take the yellow with me, so it's a bit slightly orangey than it was, but a couple of quick ones. These are also examples of tonal paintings. So this was actually a setup of white objects on a white background. This one I did for a magazine article that I wrote many years ago for the leisure painter, and I actually sort of set all this up in my studio and had directional lighting, so it was nice strong lighting. Fortunately, it's very flat in here, so this exercise, we've tried it in the past, and it's okay, but it works better if you can bring some directional lighting into it. But that was just, I think, black and white oils. This was the same sort of thing that we get in class, just not so strong lighting, still reasonably strong lighting though. And like strong contrasts. Like if you've got a strong light, so in this case it would be coming this way, you get like quite a strong shadow, you get strong highlights and strong shadows. Whereas if it's very overall, it tends to flatten things out a little bit. Or if it was a dull day.
So was something like that, you had two lots of light coming in?
I think this one is just one light, but it's fairly strong, probably coming down like that. Yeah, this one that I set up was definitely just lighting. I think what I did was I made like a sort of, almost like a tent area with cloths around it and put a spotlight on it. So it cut some lights out. So it's almost like making a little stage, really. And actually, if you're interested in still life painting, you can create some really atmospheric paintings by, maybe getting some sort of box, maybe cardboard box, and then making a hole in and sending some light in. And that we could do in here if you wanted to bring boxes in and set things up. But you can get some really nice effects that way.
Did you say that was oil?
This one's oils, yeah. This one's oils. I'm pretty sure the other one was acrylics. It doesn't really matter what you work with in terms of the medium. Just thinking, just as long as it's light and dark. So there, obviously, oils, acrylics. That's all. And also subject matter. If you didn't want to work from objects, it could be a landscape. So this was actually a demo I must have done at another point in time. Just charcoal. That's charcoal. This was a sketch I did on Saturday. I ran a workshop in Kent, so I just did this little sketch before the beginning of the workshop. Just so I got something down from observation. So this is pen, just dark, fine liner pen, and then brush pens, sort of a couple of grey brush pens, Tombow pens. So that's what, I can do something like that quite quickly with pens. So yeah, it really doesn't matter too much. This was the demo from the Thursday group last week, just using a little robot and using some pastels. So whatever the medium is, as long as you're kind of working light and dark. And it's very tempting to just sort of leap into colour with every project. But, some things can work quite nicely just light and dark. It's certainly a very quick way of working, but also a nice way of working out the tonal values. Another approach might be to do like tonal underpainting, then you could always do colour over the top. And that's another way, a very traditional way of working. That's how I was taught to paint when I was at art school. Got to do some sort of light and dark quick underpainting, then put the colour over the next layer. So yeah, there are a few different options there for you. I'll carry on with using this. So what I've done is just a bit of pastel pencil, roughed it out, and then I tend to like to, the other thing I've tried to do is mix a few different greys ready, and so a dark, a medium and a light, if they're not dried up already in acrylics, and a bit of white at the top for adjustments. Generally, I like to get the darks in if I can, so I'll go over some shadows, really just sort of looking at where the shadow areas are. There's a bit of shadow there I've not got in yet. And then I can do that. And then perhaps look at shadows under the feet. I'll use a slightly smaller brush as well. So perhaps a sharper line. Go back to the grey. Just a little bit sharper under there. And got some quite strong shadows just in here. That might be a little bit too dark, so I'll just lighten that a little bit. So sort of getting in a bit more shadow just under there. So I tend to start with the darks or start with the mid-tones, and then I might just put some really dark bits after and lighter, and then gradually work into it and work lighter. So once I've got that, I can just push that out a little bit, and then we'll just get some of these. I've got a lot of the mid-tone here, so just a little bit more mid-tone. That could be sort of working in here, into here. It's a little bit darker there. It's really just taking your time, just in, popping a mark anywhere you can see tonal differences. This, I'm using acrylics here. One of the difficulties I find with acrylics is they do dry slightly darker than what they are live, so you get that little bit of a tonal shift, which is a bit annoying really, because oils don't do that. So sometimes I've got home and the painting has looked a lot duller than I imagined it was going to be, just because of that. And then probably going for the lighter areas then. Probably going to, so that's a bit lighter there, a little bit lighter in here. There's some lights there. And then really just trying to get a sense of the texture. Perhaps use a slightly smaller brush to get a few softer, rougher edges rather, just to sort of suggest the touch of warmth. A few kind of individual marks where the light's just catching in here. And trying to keep the brushwork reasonably lively, so that you're getting an impression of a little bit here perhaps. Get a little bit, so look, this is a bit darker here, so let's just get a bit of my mid-tone grey in there. That wants to go, that's a bit darker still. And then it just lightens up a little bit on the toe there. Yeah, so it's sort of getting almost done. Is that okay? Anybody got questions?
When you mix your greys, do you
Yeah.
always use primary colours or do you ever use black and white?
Well, yeah, in this case I've used black and white, yeah.
Right.
What I had was, I've got this colour here, which is it's called a warm grey. I got given some acrylics basically, and this was warm grey. It's kind of quite handy,
Yeah.
just having that and adding a little bit of white to it, or using that and mixing it to. And then I've got another grey here. Well, in fact, I've got two. One's sort of like a probably won't see it from there. One's almost, I think it's called graphite grey, which is fat grey, and it's almost black, but not quite. So in this case, I'm just using what I've got, really, I might as well use those. But with mixer grey, if you're just using the colours we've got, I find ultramarine blue and raw amber, or one of the ambers, that will get you a nice. I think that was ultramarine blue, or that might have been purple actually. So something like that gets me to almost black, and then I can add some white to that. Yeah, that must have hit purple instead of blue there, sugar blue. Yeah, you can get a nice, that's quite a nice warm grey. Pretty. I mean, that's again something you could experiment with. Another way, I don't think I've got green now, but sometimes a green and a dark red will make a white, will make a grey. So it's quite nice to have, in some sense, greys that have got a bit more character to them. But for this exercise, it's more of a tonal green. So the main thing is, you could actually do it with it, if you didn't want to use grey, you could use sort of, maybe like a brown and white, or you could use a blue and white. Just pick a colour and do lights and darks. Okay, right.